Hey guys, welcome back. It's Mr. Dan again. How are y'all doing? Did you guys enjoy running with the pack? We sure did. I even tried the frog stand myself, but unfortunately we did not get that on video. So maybe next time. All right, here I am. I'm outdoors, and it's a beautiful day out, and the weather is just perfect for being outside right now. Don't you think? It's not too hot, not too cold, although that cold air is coming in. So that's what brings me to our next adventures. We're going to do Call of the Wild, which is on page 25 of your book, okay? That's the primary adventure that we're going to be working on this month, but we're also going to pull in some of the requirements from Paws on the Path, which is on page 77. Both of these adventures are outdoors focused. Call of the Wild has a focus on camping and emergency preparedness, and then Paws on the Path is, as you may guess by the title, it's about hiking, okay? But they're very similar. So we're gonna combine a bunch of things together. We'll plan a backyard family camp out. I'm already working with your moms and dads to plan a date for that. So hopefully we can all camp out at the same time in our backyards on maybe a Saturday, and we might even schedule a Zoom phone call so we can all say hi to each other, and maybe everybody can give a quick tour of their campsites. Okay? If you can't make it to that at the same time, that's fine. Don't worry about it. You know, do a backyard camp out on your own. And it doesn't have to be in your backyard. If you don't have a tent, that's okay. Maybe somebody has one you can borrow. If so, please let the group know if you've got extra tents or something like that. You can always do a family camp out, maybe down in your basement with some sleeping bags, or down in the living room, okay? It doesn't have to be anything fancy, all right? And you can, and maybe you have a camping trip planned that's coming up later on down the road with your family. That's fine too. Do it then, okay? So, so what are we going to do? We're going to do a camp out, like I said, and then we're going to also discuss right now, we're going to talk about possible weather changes, right? Because while the Cub Scout motto is do your best, and we always do our best, the Boy Scout motto is be prepared. Okay, so what could you do to be prepared for weather, for normal weather changes? Okay, so instead of everybody talking about the same season, here's what I want to do. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to split this up, okay? We're going to start with the normal weather, and then we're going to talk about some like natural disasters or abnormal weather, okay? So for the normal weather, so we're talking about being prepared like during the summer, the spring, the fall, the winter. Okay, what would you bring with you? Or what could you do to help be prepared for weather during those times of the year? What we're going to do is we're going to split it up by last name. So if your last name is between A and E, so A, B, C, D, E, if your last name falls in there, then you're going to take summer. Okay? Summer has its own unique challenges. Okay? It's hot. It rains, sometimes there's lightning, okay? So there are things that you need to do differently in the summer than in other times of the year, all right? And then, if your last name is not in the first group, so if it's between F and Z, okay, then I want you to talk about what you would do in the winter. Okay, what would you do to be prepared in the winter? What are things you could bring with you, or things you should think about to be prepared in the winter? Okay, it's going to be cold, there might be snow. Think about the weather that could happen during the winter time, and talk about what you could do to be prepared if you were going camping during that time of the year. Okay? And while you're doing that, okay, as we're preparing for our own backyard campouts now, it's early fall, so it's sort of in between summer and winter. So you might need some summer things during the daytime. You might need some winter things during the nighttime, right? So think about that, all right? And what I'd like you to do is make a list. It doesn't have to be written out by hand. You can just talk about it with your parent, and then they can send me an email and just let me know what your list is of things that you'll be prepared for. There's no specific requirement for how long it needs to be. Just think about a few things, okay? Maybe no more than about 5. And tell me what you would do to be prepared for each. And then make sure also that you specify the weather condition that you're being prepared for. So if it's cold weather, then, you know, if your example was a knit hat. So cold weather, knit hat, okay? Specify the weather condition that it goes along with, why you're bringing that item. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about abnormal weather, natural disasters, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to split it up by last name again. Okay, so some things that affect us around here, okay? Let's think about that. Well, the book talks about earthquakes. We don't get too many earthquakes, although there have been some small ones, okay? But earthquakes are not a big problem for here in Virginia, okay? What are some things that affect us here? Well, we get windstorms, right? Sometimes we can get hurricanes or tropical storms. They're usually not too bad by the time they get here, but that wind can be kind of crazy. Now, you know, first of all, if there's a hurricane coming, we probably shouldn't be out camping to begin with, right? But high winds don't just happen during hurricanes, right? They can happen sort of out of the blue with a thunderstorm, and we get those big windstorms that come up sort of out of nowhere. So think about what you could do for some high winds, okay? And then another thing that can come up maybe at the same time is a flood, right? Flash flood warnings. I see those all the time on the weather news, okay? Warnings of flash flood. And especially with mountainsides and sort of being hilly around here, that's something you do need to worry about here in Virginia, okay? Something you certainly need to think about. Okay, so like we did for the first part, if your last name is between A and E, then I want you to think about what you would do to prepare for a flood. Okay, what are some things you could do in the case of a flood to demonstrate what you would need to be safe or to protect yourself? All right, and then what are some things for the other group between F and Z? If your last name is within that range, tell me what you could do for a windstorm. Okay, whether that's a thunderstorm, windstorm, or whether that's maybe somehow you ended up getting caught during a tropical storm. Okay, and this doesn't necessarily have to just be during camping either, okay, for these two, because these are things that affect us that we need to be prepared for at home. So, you know, don't just limit it to camping. Think about, like, hey, during a windstorm, should you leave all your toys out in the yard? I don't know, maybe not. I guess it depends on how heavy they are. So think about things like that too. All right? And then the last thing, which this is honestly probably old news for you guys, especially kind of what we're dealing with right now, it says, demonstrate what you can do to keep from spreading germs. Well, I think we all have been taught and talked to a lot about what we can do to keep from spreading germs, right? Things like washing our hands for 20 seconds using soap and water. Make sure you're getting all the way in between your fingers, you're underneath your fingernails. Okay, so washing hands, I know you guys all know that one. So washing hands, we know. What are some other things you can do besides washing your hands for 20 seconds to keep from spreading germs? Because that's part of being a scout, right? A scout is clean, right? And being clean is the best way to keep from spreading germs, to have good hygiene. All right? So think about those, all right? And then, and that will lead us to our next part of this adventure. All right? All right, guys, it's time to talk about the outdoor code, and to help me with that, I've brought along Ryan. Say hi, bud.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm going to read it, and then Ryan, I want you to repeat after me. And I want you guys to follow along too. If you want to read it in your book while we're reading it, that's on page 31, okay? All right, here we go. We're going to say the outdoor code. As an American, I will do my best to
I will do my best to
be clean in my outdoor manners.
be clean in my outdoor manners.
Be careful with fire.
Be careful with fire.
Be considerate in the outdoors.
Be considerate in the outdoors.
And be conservation-minded.
And be conservation-minded.
What do you guys think each one of those things mean? Ryan, what do you think it means to be clean in my outdoor manners?
I don't know I think I know. Don't throw garbage on the ground.
Yeah, that's one way you can be clean in your outdoor manners, right? What's a different way you guys think we could be clean, right? So not to pollute with litter, right? There are other kinds of pollution too.
Like cars. That's why it's better to just ride a bike.
Well, yeah, that's true. But I'm thinking of like being respectful with good manners. Can you think of other kinds of pollution? Not like sound, yeah. So
sound pollution. I heard it all around the world, Daddy.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was thinking about. Sound pollution or light pollution, right?
What's light pollution?
Light pollution is, well, normally you talk about light pollution like when you're talking about astronomy and you're trying to look up at the stars and it's too bright by a city, so you go out to the country. But sound and light pollution are two ways that you could disturb somebody else who's trying to camp, right? Maybe they're in the campsite next to you and it's nighttime and you're being really loud, or you're shining your flashlight maybe in somebody's face. That's bad outdoor manners, right?
You know, I have an idea. Why don't the next time we go camping somewhere else, we build a giant brick wall around our tent, and then if we have a really big light, then nobody will see it.
Or we could just be polite and then we don't need a brick wall. That's what this is all about. Okay? All right, so I want you guys to think about the other bullets, what they mean to you. Okay, what are some ways you can be careful with fire, be considerate in the outdoors? We kind of talked about that a little bit. And be conservation minded. What does it mean to be, what does conservation mean?
I don't really know yet.
What does it mean to conserve something? Do you know? You ever heard that word? Conserve is a fancy way of saying save. If you conserve something, that means you're saving it. A lot of times people talk about like conserving electricity or conserving water. So if you're brushing your teeth, you don't let the water run in the sink.
That's what I always tell you and Kyle.
That's
you
right,
guys
yeah.
always keep the water on, then I have to turn it off.
Yeah, so you're conserving water. Or if you leave a bedroom, you turn the light off when you're done, right? Conserving electricity. So conservation minded. What are some things you can think about for conservation minded?
I don't know. Saving the animal population?
Yeah, so, but there are probably some things that you could do, small things that you can do to help be conservation minded. Things like maybe don't stray off of a path if you're hiking on a path, right? Don't step on the plants and things that are outside of the path. Stay on the path.
Well, that is one rule for me, because if I was to do that, I'd have to wear pants, because, like, you know, my skin gets all that kind of stuff, like itchy when it touches plants.
Right, but that's not about being conservation minded. The whole reason about being conservation minded is so that we don't destroy the rest of the wilderness and we conserve it and we save it for other people to view it, right? Okay, so hopefully you're thinking about that. Okay, take a minute, pause the video, discuss it, maybe make a list of some ways that you can be conservation minded or be considerate in your outdoor manners, okay? And let me know what your thoughts are about that. When you're ready, push play. Okay, so hope you guys thought about that. Let's take a minute now and talk about campfire safety and camp stove safety. Okay, first of all, should anybody who's a scout, who's a Cub Scout, be lighting fires or stoves by themselves? Should you ever be playing with matches or touching matches or lighters or anything like that? Okay, and these are good rules, not just when camping. Okay, especially they're important all the time. Okay, if you find a box of matches or a book of matches or a lighter, probably shouldn't be picking it up and playing with it, right? Okay? Find an adult and give it to an adult. Okay, but we're going to focus on campfire safety and camp stove safety. So, what are some ways that we can be safe with a campfire? Pause the video and think about it. Okay, what are some ways that you think you can be safe with a campfire? Okay, take a minute and then push play when you're ready. Okay, so you thought about that. Ryan, what are some ways that you think we can be safe with a campfire?
I think that if you want to be safe with a campfire, on the other page, I saw a picture of them having 2 red buckets of water nearby and a small fire, and the ground all clear from everything that could burn.
Yes. Okay, so you came up with a bunch of good ideas, some things that were in the book, okay? So yeah, number one, we don't want to just have our fire anywhere. It needs to be in some sort of a designated fire pit or ring, okay? Most campsites that you go to are going to have a metal ring to have your fire in, okay? Sometimes you might go on a campsite where they don't have a fire ring necessarily, and you're not always allowed to have fires at those kinds of campsites. Or if you are, then you need to be extra careful, and you might want to do something like put some rocks around, okay, big rocks. But one thing you want to be careful of is not to use river rocks. Okay, river rocks, unlike things like granite or quartz or some of those other rocks that we find here in Northern Virginia, river rocks, if you take rocks like off of a riverbed, those big round smooth rocks, sometimes those can have water stuck inside them, and not unlike a popcorn kernel, which has a little bit of water inside the kernel, if that rock heats up next to that fire, it could explode. Okay. And it's not going to be like a giant explosion, but you could get hurt. You could get rock dust or something in your eyes. Okay, so don't use river rocks. You could, if you're maybe at home in your backyard and you wanted to have a fire pit, you could use something like bricks or like landscape stone edgers. Those are usually made out of concrete. Those are good options. Okay, or some sort of actual fire pit that was made to be used as a fire pit. Okay, so you want to have it in a specific area that's meant for fires, and you want to prepare it so that the fire doesn't escape, right?
That's right.
The other thing that you talked about was clearing the ground around it, okay? Things like dry dead leaves, pine needles, dead grass, all of these things can easily catch on fire, and it only takes one little spark or one little ember to pop out of the fire, okay, to catch something like that on fire. And before you know it, if you turn your back and you're not paying attention, you could have a forest fire on your hands. So clear the area, okay? Sometimes you might want to bring a rake with you, especially if say, for instance, you were getting ready to help set up a big pack campfire. Okay, and we're gonna have a big bonfire and not just like a small campsite fire.
Okay.
You might want to bring a real rake with you and rake around to clear the area. Otherwise, you can just use your feet, use your shoes, and sort of scoot all that dead stuff away. Okay, at least 3 to 5 feet away is probably what you want, because those embers can pop out and those sparks can pop out. And I'm sure you've seen that, even if it's only been maybe in a fireplace in your home. Okay. So clear the area. The other thing is always have some way to extinguish the fire. Okay? Most campsites have a spigot that you could fill a bucket of water with. You could bring a bottle of water. Water is the best way to put out a fire because it smothers it and it cools it. Some other ways you can put out fire are by shoveling dirt on it. So if you had a camp shovel, you could have a pile of sand or dirt ready to go, and you could shovel the dirt on top, and that would smother it. Now, smothering it with dirt, that will smother it, but it'll also stay hot for a long time. So you need to be careful about that, especially if you smother it and it's not well marked, because if somebody were to walk on that, even the next day, it could still be extremely hot underneath there. So sand will smother the flames, but it doesn't exactly cool it down as well as something like water. Yes?
Can milk actually cool down and smother the flames?
Could milk? I suppose milk could, yeah,
Could
but
you?
that would be a waste of milk. What, Kyle? What?
We have a fire extinguisher.
We do have a fire extinguisher in our basement. That's right, Kyle.
Yeah, we got tons of fire putting out things like fast fire put out or whatever it's called.
Yeah. We've got fire extinguishers.
That were already built into the house.
Yeah.
For some reason. when we
So
moved
a
in.
fire extinguisher is something you could bring, okay? Although, you know, if you've got a bucket of water and you have maybe a cooking pot, a big cooking pot works as a great bucket of water, just fill that up and have it ready to go, okay? Have it somewhere nearby where you can easily grab it. And you can, if you mix some dirt and some water and sort of swirl it around, that's the best way to make sure that all those embers are completely extinguished, okay? So those are good things for fire safety. And of course, the number one rule of a fire is we never leave a fire unattended. Yes.
How can water? What are embers actually?
Embers, those are the glowing coals. That's a good question. Ember is just another name for the coals. So the glowing orange, like pieces of wood or coal that are burned, right? They don't have the flames coming out, but they're glowing orange. Those are embers. They're extremely hot, and if they land on something that's flammable, like leaves or pine needles or dead grass, you can get a fire really fast. Okay, and then the last rule, and this is probably the most important for Cub Scouts, is if something goes in the fire, it doesn't come out of the fire. Okay, so don't stick a stick in the fire and then pull it out and wave it around. Now, of course, if you're roasting marshmallows, okay, number one, you got to be doing that safely with an adult, okay, and you shouldn't be lighting the stick on fire. You should just be toasting your marshmallows, okay, or cooking something like a hot dog. But if you just have a stick and you stick it in the fire, then it stays in the fire, and you shouldn't just be throwing things in the fire anyway, okay? It's especially not good to throw things like garbage in your fire. It used to be a long time ago, they would say when you were done camping you could burn your garbage, but now we know that that just causes more pollution, okay? Especially with things like plastics that will make toxic gas and smoke that you don't want to breathe in. That's really bad for your health. Now, if you have something that's paper, right? Paper or cardboard, sometimes that's okay, all right? But the best rule is to not burn garbage. Just stick with sticks and wood and things like that, okay? All right, so we talked about campfire safety. Now let's talk about camp stove safety. And for a lot of you, you probably have a gas stove in your house. A lot of the houses here in Virginia do. So really, the camp stove and your gas stove in your kitchen are not too different, okay? Because camp stoves usually use something like propane or another kind of gas that's used to create a flame to cook over. Okay, so you've got some burners with a flame. Okay, so anytime you have an open flame, right, you always have to be careful. Obviously, you could burn yourself. You could burn yourself on any stove, whether it's a camp stove or an electric stove or a glass cooktop stove. Okay, you can always burn yourself. Okay, that's why you never touch a stove, even if you think that it's cold. Right? Don't ever put your hand down on a burner, because just because it looks cool doesn't mean that it is. All right? But with camp stoves and that open flame, there are some extra precautions that you need to take. Okay? Number one, if you're wearing long sleeves, like say you're camping in the wintertime and you've got long sleeves, you might want to roll that up. And even if you can't do that, you don't want to have loose clothing, and you don't want to have things hanging down. Okay, try to roll up your sleeves. Try to wear well-fitting clothes, things that are not loose, that are going to dangle down and maybe get caught on fire. If your clothes do get caught on fire, what should you do?
Roll around.
Stop, drop, and roll. Stop, drop, and roll. And if you're with somebody whose clothes catch on fire, what can you do to help put it out?
Throw a blanket on them.
Excellent. Throw a blanket on them, right? Pat a blanket on them. Use that blanket to smother them. Okay? So if you catch on fire, okay, and it could happen to anybody at any time, stop, drop, and roll. And if you're next to somebody and you see that their clothes are caught on fire, grab a blanket and put a blanket on them and pat that blanket down on the flames so that way you'll smother it, okay? All right, so what are we going to do for camp stove safety? Well, number one, you're not going to cook on a stove by yourself. Okay, it's important to learn how to cook, especially while camping, but it's important to do that with an adult. Okay, so always have an adult with you to help while you're cooking. Number two, only the adults are going to light the stove, and only the adults are either going to fill the fuel or hook up the tanks. Okay, that's not something for Cub Scouts to do. Okay, and then like we said, if you've got loose or baggy clothing, okay, roll up your sleeves or just wear something different. Okay, you don't want any loose clothing hanging down anywhere near that there's a flame. And if you have long hair or somebody who's helping you has long hair, make sure that's pulled back. Maybe tuck it up inside of a hat, or if you have long hair, you can put it back in a ponytail, something like that. Okay, anything just to keep stuff from dropping down into the flames. Okay, so those are camp stove safety. And when we do our backyard camp out, I'm going to do some cooking demonstrations and we'll talk a little bit more about camp stove safety. Yes?
I am so excited, but Daddy, even though I'm a professional hot dog and marshmallow cooker, I'm still, I still undo that metal pole, which is very long, so
Yeah, right.
I get enough distance from the fire and start cooking the hot dogs and marshmallows.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So, the next thing we're going to talk about are the leave no trace principles for kids, and this covers both the Call of the Wild and the Paws on the Path. So, what are the leave no trace principles? Well, what does it mean to not leave a trace? Ryan, you're kind of an amateur detective, so what does it mean to not leave a trace? What's a trace?
A trace is like a mark from your shoes, so...
Yeah, like a clue or something, right?
So probably...
Something that you know, something that lets somebody else who comes after you know that you were there, right?
I have an idea. If you're stepping in dust, then probably you could have a broom behind you to wipe all those traces away.
Maybe. Okay, so leave no trace. Why is it important for us to leave no trace? Why don't you take a minute, pause the video, and think about why would it be important if you're going camping or if you're enjoying the outdoors to not leave a trace. Okay, so pause the video, think about that, and then push play when you're ready. All right, did you think about it? Ryan, what do you think? Why is it important to not leave a trace when you're outdoors and you're camping?
I don't know. Probably an animal would follow you back to your campsite. Like, most importantly, you don't want a bear at your campsite.
Well, maybe. Yeah, so... Here, come on over here so everybody can see. So, yeah, so maybe you don't want to leave food out, right, to attract animals, because it's not good for animals to eat human food, right? Because then they might want to come and find more human food, and that's dangerous not only for people, but it's also dangerous for the animals, okay? Okay, so that's one thing, but when we're talking about the outdoor code, this sort of goes hand in hand with it, and so there are some other things that we can talk about with leave no trace. How would you feel if you went to a campsite, Ryan, and there was a bunch of garbage left behind there?
Well, I'd feel like I'd have to pick it all up.
Right. Yeah, you wouldn't want to do that, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to
you
have
go
to
on
pick
a
up
hike,
everybody else's garbage.
when you go on a hike or you go out camping, you want to enjoy how beautiful the outdoors is and how beautiful nature is. You don't want to be looking at piles of garbage, right? And if you are going to have a fire, should you just cut down a tree or something like that, right? No, right? You don't want to do things like that and destroy the wilderness. We want to leave those things for other people to enjoy. So, ideally, we want to make it seem like we were never there when we leave, right? It should look the same way or better than we found it when it's our time to leave. And there's a really, really great way to remember this, and it goes like this: take nothing but pictures, leave nothing but, footprints.
Daddy.
Yeah. Right? So you shouldn't be taking things out of the woods, right? We should be leaving them there so that other people who come after us can enjoy them, okay? We should be cleaning up after ourselves. So what did it say right here? Know before you go, right? So know the rules of where you're going, right? Don't assume that you can do something. Choose the right path, okay? Stay on the path, right? Don't wander off on the path and try to create a new trail. Trash your trash. Collect your garbage and bring it out with you, right? Don't burn it. Don't leave it on the ground, okay? Take it with you. Leave what you find, right? We already talked about that, okay? It's great to look at, and that's why it's there for you to enjoy, and it's not there for you to take home and bring with you, okay? Leave what you find for other people to enjoy. Be careful with fire. We already talked about that. One little spark is all it takes to burn down a whole forest, okay? So be careful with fire. Respect the wildlife. We kind of talked about that, didn't we, right? The bad things that can happen to animals when they start getting comfortable around humans, because humans either feed them on purpose or unintentionally leave food out and don't throw it away and don't clean up. Okay, so we have to respect wildlife, and also we want to be kind to the animals that we see. We're not going to try to scare away things, right? If you see an animal, you gotta be quiet and whisper and walk softly, not clip-clomping and carrying on through the woods, right? We want to be quiet because there might be other people on the trail who are also out there enjoying the outdoors, who want to see animals too. And if we're being loud and scaring away the animals, then, well, number one, we're frightening the animals, and that's not nice. And number two, we're taking away that enjoyment from other people. And then that goes right in line with the last one, which is be kind to other visitors, okay? And we talked about that with the outdoor code. We talked about that just now with not making lots of noise, being careful, okay? Be kind to other visitors, right? Treat other people the way that you would want other people to treat you, okay? And so that way we can all enjoy the outdoors together, all right? So those are the leave no trace principles, and I want you to think about how you can apply those every time you're outdoors, not just on a scout camp out, not just on a family camp out, but every time you're outside, even if you're just walking around in your neighborhood, if you're just hiking on one of the trails around here, okay? If you're riding your bike, if you're outdoors, think about the ways that you can apply the outdoor code to be respectful and to enjoy the outdoors, to preserve it for other people after you to enjoy, and to allow the other people who are there with you to enjoy it too. All right?